Chapter 6. When we asked the border guard the way to Istanbul, he pointed to a lonely country road. It stretched out into the darkness of the hilly, fertile country of eastern Thrace. As we walked, I saw for the first time the minaret of a stone mosque. The mosque's domes and spires fascinated me, and I was thrilled to see a place of God. There was no traffic on the road, and Istanbul was still 150 miles away. What now? As we stood, wondering how we would ever reach our destination, an old flatbed truck rattled down the road and pulled up next to us. Strangely, it was covered with wooden benches upon which sat a dozen or so cheerless policemen. We clambered aboard. All wore shabby uniforms. All were silent, except for one who wore no uniform. He whispered in my ear, "I want to buy hashish from you. Sell to me. I am not a policeman." "I don't have any," I answered. He demanded again and again. Later, he jumped down from the truck, put on a police hat, and strutted away. In the middle of the night, we arrived in Istanbul. When the leader of the police asked us where we would stay, Ramsey told him that we were looking for an inexpensive place. The leader peered at us over his spectacles and then walked off to speak privately with a junior officer. When he returned, he told us to follow his assistant policeman. The assistant's uniform was faded and torn. His expression was stoic, and he didn't speak a single word or even look in our direction. We followed behind him through the deserted streets of Istanbul, the poverty increasing with every block. It became obvious to us that he was taking us into the heart of the ghetto, one of the very places where the cholera epidemic was raging. The scene was demoralizing. Poverty and disease surrounded us on all sides. Jeff trembled. "We've made a big mistake. That no man's land was safer than this place." Even Ramsey sighed out loud. "Mates, in my years of travel, I've never seen a place as depressing as this." I tried to pray, but my mind only reeled in confusion. Where was this man taking us? The unnerving darkness was pierced by the shrieks and moans of people in agony. The contagion was taking a severe toll in this filthy slum. I was afraid to breathe. Cholera ravages swiftly, bringing about severe intestinal misery and death. We were lost and alone and led by this strange man. We couldn't turn back. An ominous medieval building made of stone loomed before us. An eerie sensation seized us. All my intuitions told me to run. But our guide, smiling, led us inside. We entered a dimly lit room that served as a billiard hall. Inside, a dozen men puffed on cigarettes and shot pool. They looked like the sleaziest gangsters of the underworld. As they sized us up with icy stares, I couldn't help but think that these thugs were the kind who would think nothing of killing someone over a gambling debt. The leader, short but formidable, leaned against a wall. His muscles bulged from a skin-tight black t-shirt as he scraped dirt from under his fingernails with a switchblade. When he saw our guide, he slipped the knife into his pocket, slid his hand across his oily black hair, and came over to speak with him. The two seemed to strike up some kind of an agreement and motioned for us to follow to the back of the pool hall and up a dark, deep stairway made of uneven slabs of solid stone. To one side was a stone wall, and on the other side a steep drop into a deep cellar with no railing. It was pitch black. We lost our breath climbing. Once at the top, we passed through an unlit hallway that led to the room where we were to stay. There was no question of a hospitable welcome. Rather, our hosts insisted that we pay them cash up front. The aggression was so startling that it began to dawn on us that we had seriously blundered. Had we just walked into a trap? We'd wanted cheap, not end of the line. Ramsey spoke up, telling them that we didn't have any Turkish lira and asking them to tell the exchange rate for dollars. Then we can discuss paying you, but for one night only, Ramsey said. They shocked us by offering only half the official bank rate. Ramsey objected and politely tried to bargain for a higher rate, but the head shark would have nothing of it, as we were now in his turf. With a scowl deforming his face, he flung his smoking cigarette at the wall. He sliced the air between us with his switchblade and exploded into a tirade. Small though he was, the power of his cruelty terrified us. His piercing black eyes raged, lips quivering. He screamed insanely, pointing his finger into our faces. Anger personified seethed before us. The other thugs looked on with cold expressions. By this time, even our erstwhile friend, the policeman, shuddered and winced in fear. We were on our own. Taking our money, the men left us in the prison of our room. What if they come back to rob or kill us? We looked for an escape route, but there was none. Other than the door, there was only one window with a long, straight drop to the cobblestone alley below. We were trapped. "Jeff, lock the door," Ramsey whispered. "And Monk, help me push this double bed against it. This way, those goons can't get in while we're sleeping." Sleep was the last thing on any of our minds, but it seemed wise to do what we could do to protect ourselves. As quietly as we could, we lifted and pushed the bed into place and tied the steel bedpost to the doorknob with a rope for added security. Ramsey and Jeff lay on this bed, while I took a smaller cot against a wall. The room was a dump. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. Green paint and plaster peeled on the walls. Cobwebs dangled from every corner, and a stale stench turned our stomachs. Gasping for fresh air, I wrestled with a large window 6 feet high and 3 feet wide until I finally opened it. I fell back into the bed, but within minutes, bed bugs attacked. Rest was out of the question. The three of us lay in the dark, waiting. An hour or so later, we heard a key slowly turning in the lock. Silently, the door opened and then hit the bed. The intruders pushed gently at first, not realizing that the three of us were squatting on the floor at the other end of the bed, heaving all our weight into it. They pushed harder. Soon they understood that we were blocking them, and howled in rage, slamming their bodies against the door. It flung open, but we pushed all our weight against the bed and shut it again. By now, both sides in this life and death tug of war were frantic. I jumped onto the bed to again tie the doorknob to the bedpost when through the crack in the door, one of the attackers stabbed a knife in my direction. My mind screamed, "They want to kill us." The battle continued. They cracked their bodies against the door and slammed again and again into the bed. They screamed threats and curses as we bashed ourselves into the bed. Unable to force the door open, they abruptly retreated. A heavy silence fell. To rest before the inevitable next siege, I retreated to my bug-ridden bed. My mind was full of ghastly thoughts. What was I doing here, trapped in the cholera-infested ghettos of Istanbul, a target for the underworld? Tossing over and over, I called to mind the life I had left in Highland Park. I'm a simple boy with a loving family and friends. Why did I leave the shelter of such a peaceful home? Now I'm helpless and alone, I prayed. I came here in search of enlightenment. Is this the path I have to tread in order to learn surrender? Then another thought emerged. If so, let it be. In our predicament, only God could save us. My prayers were interrupted by the door smashing into the bed. Round 2 of the battle began. Our would-be assassins shouted in wrath, pounding ferociously. A moment of inattention, and we would be dead. Despite the biting cold, sweat flooded from our pores. We gasped in exhaustion, and our limbs were battered. But our predators did not tire. Their roars terrorized us. By this time, I felt as if my bladder were about to burst. The only toilet was in the hallway outside the door. 3 formidable battles raged simultaneously within me. The battle to keep the assassins out, the battle to keep my urine in, and the battle to make sense of it all. Unable to bear it any longer, I deserted Ramsey and Jeff and climbed up to the windowsill. There I relieved myself into the alley below. Suddenly, a woman's scream blasted my ears. The alley was about 15 feet wide. Straight across from me was a window where an old Muslim woman, dressed in a traditional black veil, had been watching. In my desperation, I had not seen her, but she stared straight at me. Outraged by my obscenity, she screamed in revulsion. This was too much. I stood helplessly on the window ledge with my pants down, urinating face to face with her and begging for pity. Cursing me, she threw a shoe into my face. It was a direct hit. I shut the window, jumped down, and wiped blood from my nose and mouth. But I had not finished. My bladder was still bursting. Meanwhile, Ramsey was crying out, "Monk, get back here. We can't hold them off." I was losing all 3 battles. I can't survive, I thought. God help me. Just then, I saw the answer and finished where I'd left off, in the shoe. Putting it in a desk drawer, I re-entered the battle. Pressing firmly, we held them off. But we were trapped with neither food nor water. It was only a matter of time before they broke in. As the gray light of the dawn appeared, we agreed that our only hope was to quietly escape through the door between attacks. We decided to risk our lives on the tiny chance of escape. We had no idea whether a guard was standing post outside our door, but if so, we were dead. It was a chance we had to take. Slowly, and as quietly as possible, we swung the door open into the pitch darkness. I could not see my hand before my face. As we tiptoed forward, the aged wooden floor creaked at every step, each creak like a scream. In this darkness, would we blunder right into one of them? My heart was pounding. We made it to the Gothic staircase. Still unable to see, we groped the outside wall, terrified of falling over the other side. In this way, we crept down the staircase toward the dimly lit pool hall, where, to our horror, the guard lay sleeping on a pool table. Holding our breath, we stole across the room to the door. It was locked. The latch would not budge. We had never seen a lock like this. Frantically, each one of us tried to open it. Finally, our attempts roused the guard from his stupor, and he shouted to the others. From another set of stairs came the horrifying sound of their stampede. "Oh my God," I gasped. "Open the lock. Quick, Ramsey, open the lock. I'm trying. He jiggled the lock in every possible way to no avail. The stomping of boots as our captors came closer made me sick. Just as they were almost upon us, all at once, the lock popped open and we burst into the street, running as we had never run before, backpacks and all. Behind us, we could hear the screams of our adversaries. Not looking back, we dove into a taxi. We knew only one place in Istanbul. "Blue Mosque! Blue Mosque!" we chanted in unison. But scanning through the rearview mirror, at the gang of men approaching us, the taxi driver did not move. He saw an opportunity. $200, he demanded. "What? $200? Jeff cried. The driver shouted loudly, $200, $200. Hastily we agreed, "Yes, $200, $200. He zoomed off. But were we safe? Jeff, the keeper of the wallet, was concerned. "We can't give him $200, he whispered. "Will he be the one to kill us?" We didn't want to find out. At the first stoplight, we bolted from the taxi. The driver howled, $200, $200. But we were gone.